Police called for domestic violence are met with an AK-47. A domestic violence call-out ends in absolute mayhem when officers are instantly confronted with an agitated male holding an AK-47. We have two different police body cams here from both responding officers on the night of November the 20th of 2022. A call to 911 was placed regarding a domestic violence dispute that was taking place on the 6900 block of Village Meadows Drive, which looks honestly delightful to me when I looked on Street View. I love all of the homes on this road. How I can imagine living in America, well, one destination anyway, as I have so many places I would love to visit, and even live in the USA. So vast, so many places to go. Not like the UK, I've crossed it in a couple of days. And this encounter took place in Fountain, Colorado, in the US of A. Warning, this video could be distressing, although nothing graphic is shown. This is a non-profit educational video. So, on the night of November the 20th, 2022, dispatch received a call from a female stating that she had to flee from her home after a physically violent argument had erupted between her and her husband, Mr.Floersheim. Oh, I haven't practiced saying his name. I'm so sorry if I pronounced this wrong. Police had already had previous run-ins with Mr. Floersheim, including one of the officers who would respond that night. On the 911 call, the wife also states that her husband does have access to firearms. So immediately, we have literally the most dangerous call out to respond to here, which is always a domestic violence call, and even more so when the culprit is armed. Officer Ryder would be the first to arrive on scene and was alone at first, waiting for backup to approach the situation. He first went to speak to the victim, who called 911, the wife, who was now taking refuge at a neighbour's house of which she had run to after her altercation with her husband. The victim relayed to Officer Ryder how she and Mr. Floersheim had a heated verbal argument, which turned nasty as she tried to leave the residence with her 8-year-old son, who very worryingly remained in the property. She said how when she tried to leave with her child, her husband prevented her from doing so and physically threw her to the ground. She also relayed how her husband was intoxicated. Great. So we have a hyped up, agitated and also intoxicated male with firearm access who's currently in a domestic dispute. Yeah, this one's gonna get crazy and pretty darn quickly. So as soon as Corporal Haley from the Fountain Police Department, Officer Ryder's backup, arrived on scene, immediately they broke into action. With the life and safety of a child at stake inside, they decided to not wait for further backup, but to instead approach it alone and together. Approaching the residence, Corporal Haley informed his officer that he had previously encountered this male, and it didn't end well. He'd charged Mr. Floersheim with a DUI, and following the case, he'd actually called and threatened Corporal Haley. So, to keep tensions as low as possible, he recommended that Officer Ryder would make initial contact. I must say, it's a bloody good job he did, and it has nothing to do with tensions. You will see for yourself in a moment here. So Haley takes a stance further back and down onto the residence driveway, but still with a view to the door. As agreed, Ryder approaches the door himself first. Interestingly, I noticed how he doesn't actually announce that it's police, or in fact, who he is at all. Let's have a look at this wild footage and go over it after.
You are going to speak with Mr. Wood. This is the dude who I charged with DUI, and then after the case, what's called the threat. Okay.
a gun.
Whoa!
Whoa, whoa! Put the gun down! Put the gun down! Put the gun down!
You better
Put
sit
it!
back.
Put the gun down! Do it now! 961, shots fired! Shots fired! Good, I'm good. I'm good.
Do a swipe right now, secondary.
I'm good. You good?
21. You had an AK-47 rifle. Fired at us. Break. Did you fire?
Yeah, that's what brought him back. K-961, can we get medical started? I did fire one round. I hit the suspect.
Oh! Hey, put the gun down!
Put the gun down!
Put the gun down! Put the gun down! Put the fucking gun down now!
Put it down!
Get behind cover, Ryder! Ryder! Alright, drop back. The house, get in the house. Three Frank 21, send to everybody right now. Check yourself right now, check yourself. Do a swipe right now, secondary.
I'm good.
3 Frank 21, he had an AK style rifle fired at us. Break. Did you fire? My fucking gun jammed.
K-961, can we get medical started? I did fire one round. I hit the suspect.
Well, that went from 0 to 100 in fucking no time. Luckily, Officer Ryder's hearing is very good. He certainly doesn't need any hearing aids, that's for sure. Which is ideal for a situation like this, as even though they were responding to a domestic situation with guns possibly involved, it seems at first that Officer Ryder only has his torch in his hand. He really needs to be utilising that torch on his firearm if he has it, so he has both at the ready. But anyway, he's quick thinking after his owl-like hearing clocked the sound of that weapon inside being racked. He quickly warned his corporal and got his own firearm at the ready, and just in time. It was clear that Mr. Floersheim wasn't dropping his weapon, after Officer Ryder demanded he drop it multiple times, with Haley also shouting the same from the side. After, I believe, 8 commands were given in 7 seconds of Officer Ryder basically being held at gunpoint now in a confined area, well, half confined luckily. He made the decision to shoot the heavily armed male with just one shot, which connected with the suspect's torso and made him quickly fall to the ground. But as we know, that doesn't end things. Not at all. Around 23 rounds of this deadly AK-47 would then be heard, coming from the resident. Yep, he was shooting from where he lay, on the ground, pretty much emptying his entire magazine. As you saw, officers would retreat for safer coverage. Unfortunately, and this is why I said earlier it's a good job that Ryder went first, as we then see the frustrating scene of Corporal Haley suffering gun malfunctions. He actually never gained full control of that gun and never shot off any rounds during the whole altercation. And if I'm right, he also never relays this to his officer until afterwards. I must say, watching his body cam was thoroughly frustrating and aggravating to witness. I can only imagine how he felt. I mean, there's only 2 of them in the entire fight. I thought he should have at least let his fellow officer know his situation and that he could provide absolutely no backup at all here. Thankfully, Ryder thought fast, shot the dude and got out of there. That's another thing for me. Actually, my main critique of this whole video really is just how boxed in and unarmed Officer Ryder leaves himself here on that initial contact. Law enforcement are fully aware that this is the most dangerous call-out. These guys are aware he could be armed, and yet he still leaves himself way too up close for that first encounter. I've just seen too many videos of these exact situations, guys, and it's crazy just how often they come out shooting before anything else. Therefore, responding officers must make sure they have a safe area around them. Like, for example, they have good distance between them. Officer Ryder doesn't need to be this close at all. I reckon he should have also made himself known here too. Another safety issue is he has no coverage at all. He could have easily got shot, and he's incredibly lucky he didn't, to be honest. Maybe Mr. Floersheim was expecting his wife, considering the officer never spoke. Then, not only does he have no safe distance between him and an armed male, plus no coverage, he also half-boxed himself in. I mean, yeah, he can jump out like he did, well enough, but not always quick enough. So for me, that was the main thing here. He first of all should have announced who he was when knocking, but considering the volatile circumstances, the officer's history with the subject, I think he really should have armed himself with a gun, and a torch, preferably. And immediately after knocking, he should have exited the porch and come down the stairs. He could have then used the elevated porch itself for coverage. And of course, just exited the area easier and quicker. But boxing himself in like that, he could have easily died. Especially as Mr. Floersheim then pretty much emptied his gun out at police. But as he had been hit once and fallen, his shots all missed the responding officers. Ryder then got out of there, taking a wider route back to his buddy in blue, who, like I said, never even shot his weapon once. I can imagine it would have been a different story if his damn gun didn't jam. What a nightmare. It's fantastic that Officer Ryder stayed alert thoroughly and managed to hear that gun racking. I got my good old American friend to look into this one for me, and he reckons that this is a DPMS Anvil AK-47, which I totally trust in his research. I bet after all that though I probably pronounced it all wrong, but fuck it. Thanks for looking into that for me, dude. I mean, we see how big and dangerous this gun is as soon as the door is opened, and to be fair, he could have instantly shot the officer at this point. But at least with Ryder's great hearing, he could preempt what he was about to be faced with. I've heard it's very important actually, when signing up to be a police officer, that they make sure your senses are adequate enough. Like that you can smell smoke from afar. And just like this situation, that you can hear a gun racking from behind a closed door or wall. It's very interesting. I like that. It's good that they didn't have too much chatter between them either, once positioned, as it meant Officer Ryder was completely present in the moment, enough to hear that racking, and he could then prepare himself with his firearm, which, as I said before, he really should have had out already. It's also good the officer chose to lower his light as Mr. Floersheim answered, as not to blind, daze or confuse him, and so he could now visibly see its officers. Now if Floersheim really wanted to, he could have easily, at this point, opened up on Officer Ryder and most certainly ended his life right there. So I believe the demands given were more than enough here. No one was backing down in this moment. Obviously, the officer can't. It's his duty and job. He therefore makes the decision to shoot Mr. Floersheim, but just the once. He then very wisely fucks off out of there. He could have shot more though. I've seen video after video of officers just completely unloading on a suspect, and way too over the top, in my opinion. It may have been so he could get out of there, but either way, this one shot in the suspect's torso left him falling to the ground, whereas we hear he then unloads his weapon. over to Corporal Haley's bodycam. Just as they both realise the suspect is most definitely armed, is when the malfunctioning begins. Haley smartly drops his torch for more control, but then immediately he faces gun issues. He had what is called a double feed malfunction, known as probably the hardest gun malfunction to try and clear. The slide stayed to the back, his extractor failed to work and released the round, and now he faces a second round being stuck too. Ugh, absolute nightmare. He actually then faces a secondary malfunction, for fuck's sake. He uses a bit of brute force and finally manages to clear the jam and slam his magazine back in and ready for action. But by this point, it's pretty much all over. Which is why I said before, it's a really good job that Officer Ryder was placed where he was. So what happened after the cameras are cut for us? Well, as we heard, additional officers were then called to the scene, and once they arrived, a hostage team would cautiously then approach the home, knowing a child was still inside, and aware that Mr. Floersheim was still alive at this point, and armed with that deadly AK-47. And we haven't actually heard all of the rounds go off that he had in that magazine. Or could have had in that magazine. The child would be found unharmed, thank God. He was hiding in a room, and once he heard the officers call out to him that they were there to get him to safety, the poor, terrified boy came running out. Gosh, how awful for him to have witnessed and been such a big part of it all. Basically a hostage in his own home by his own father. Think just how aggressively loud those AK-47 bullets and rounds would have sounded to him, right there inside of the house where they were fired from. Known for its booming sound, it is a very dominating and intimidating weapon to be around, especially so up close. Bless him. And then to see his own father shot on the ground, with total destruction around him, must have had some really awful lasting effects on the kid, mentally and emotionally. It's tragic just how many people seem to forget about the children, and how damaging the things they see and hear can really be, for the rest of their lives. I'm so glad I wasn't one of those children. Look at my cute mum and dad. But this happens so often, you guys, especially if it involves the children, like custody disputes, which all too often end in murder. Really is tragic. Even when officers and paramedics both responded to Mr. Floersheim and his torso injury, he continued to be agitated and hyped up, being verbally abusive to everyone there, including the paramedics, who were attempting to render aid to him, clearly very intoxicated. So Mr. Floersheim would at some point be transported to a nearby hospital for life-saving treatment, but would later pass away from that one torso round that Officer Ryder hit him with. It's really sad that a wife lost a husband and a father to her children that night, but it was down to the decisions he made himself. It's just awful he put his son through all of that too. My thoughts are with the family of Mr. Ross Milton Floersheim. Well done to Officer Brett Ryder and Corporal Haley too, but if it wasn't for Brett's calm manner, his presence in the moment, to hear that gun racking, and quick reactions in both switching to his weapon and making the decision to shoot the subject, things could have gone a very different way. Thankfully, the one shot he let off meant the subject would fall to the ground, and in turn made him much less of a threat, also leaving him with a chance of surviving. But sadly, obviously, he didn't. Well, that was intense to watch, and an extremely close call for Officer Brett Ryder, but I'm so glad they managed to rescue the child safely and return him to his mum. Thank you all for joining me in this episode today, and if you made it to the end, guess what you are? That's right, a legend. I appreciate you all and everyone supporting me along the way. Please like, comment and subscribe for more, as I will be back. Or, as Arnie would say, I'll be back. I can't say it. Or as Arnie would say, I'll be back. I can't do it. I'll be back. Love to you all and stay safe out there, guys. Random Jan.